I built this house, and I won't let you back in.
The wine glass exploded against the marble floor like my marriage, sudden, messy, and impossible to clean up properly. I stood there watching the burgundy liquid seep into the grout while 30 pairs of eyes stared at me, waiting for my next move. My wife Sophia had just announced to her entire social circle that she'd rather kiss our dog than dance with me again. Well, I said, setting down what remained of my glass. At least Baxter has better breath than most of the men here. The nervous laughter that followed told me everything I needed to know about this crowd. These weren't my people. Honestly, they didn't even seem human as far as I could tell. They were Sophia's collection of social climbers, real estate vultures, and trust fund babies who thought manual labor was something you hired Mexicans to do. I'm Eli Quinn, 42 years old, former Navy engineer turned custom home builder. I work with my hands, I sweat for my money, and I sleep well at night knowing I've never screwed anyone over to get ahead. At least I used to sleep well. These days, I mostly lie awake wondering when my wife turned into someone I don't recognize. Eli, darling, you're being dramatic again, Sophia said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she'd perfected since joining the country club set. She looked stunning in her black cocktail dress, the one that cost more than most people make in a month. Her blonde hair was pulled back in some complicated style that probably required a team of professionals, and her smile was as sharp as a scalpel. Am I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife just publicly humiliated me in front of 30 witnesses. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who pays for all this. The silence that followed was delicious. You could practically hear the mental calculations as everyone tried to figure out which side to be on. Sophia's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. You're embarrassing yourself, she hissed. No, sweetheart, I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference. That's when Mason Carter stepped forward. Of course it was Mason. Sophia's boss, mentor, and if my suspicions were correct, something a lot more intimate than either of those titles suggested. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, manicured nails, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. Eli, maybe you should take a walk, Mason said, placing what he probably thought was a calming hand on my shoulder. Cool off a bit. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. Mason, you've got exactly 3 seconds to remove that hand before I demonstrate what 12 years in the Navy taught me about hand-to-hand combat. He pulled back like he'd touched a hot stove. Good. At least he wasn't completely stupid. There's no need for threats, he said, but his voice had lost that patronizing tone. Who's threatening? I'm just sharing information, like how I know you've been taking my wife to lunch every Tuesday for the past 3 months. Or how your car was parked outside the Ritz-Carlton last Thursday when Sophia was supposedly at her book club. The crowd had gone from uncomfortable to riveted. This was better than reality TV, and they all knew it. Sophia's 3 closest friends, Callie, Jade, and Vanessa, were practically vibrating with excitement. They loved drama, as long as they weren't the ones in the spotlight. You're being paranoid, Sophia said, but her voice cracked slightly. Am I? Then you won't mind if I call the Ritz right now and ask them to check their records for last Thursday. I'm sure they'd remember you. You're very memorable. Mason stepped between us. That's enough. You're clearly drunk. I've had 2 beers in 4 hours, but thanks for the concern. I pulled out my phone. You know what? Let's settle this right now. Eli, stop. Sophia grabbed my arm. Please, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? Lady, you just told a room full of people you'd rather make out with a golden retriever than touch your husband. I think the scene was already made. Ryan, my oldest friend and the only person in the room who actually gave a damn about me, appeared at my elbow. Come on, man. Let's get some air. I looked around the room one more time. These people who'd eaten my food, drunk my liquor, and smiled to my face while gossiping behind my back. Sophia's friends who'd never missed a chance to remind me that I wasn't good enough for their circle. Mason, who'd been circling my wife like a shark for months. You know what the funny thing is? I said, addressing the room. I built this house. Every beam, every tile, every custom fixture. I designed it. I supervised the construction. I even did some of the electrical work myself. And now I'm standing in my own home being told I don't belong here. I walked to the French doors that led to the pool area. Enjoy the party, everyone. But remember, Everything you're enjoying tonight, the house, the pool, the wine, the food, it all belongs to me. And I've got a very good memory. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. The pool lights cast everything in an ethereal blue glow, and for a moment, I could almost pretend this was still my sanctuary. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Eli, wait. I turned to find Sophia following me, her heels clicking on the travertine. Behind her, through the glass doors, I could see the party continuing, but with a lot more animated conversation than before. What do you want, Sophia? She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of her perfume, something expensive that Mason had probably bought her. I want to explain. Explain what? How you've been cheating on me? How you've been lying to my face for months? How you just humiliated me in front of 30 people? Which part needs explaining? I haven't been cheating. But she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. Right, and I suppose Mason's tongue was just checking your dental work when I saw you two by the pool an hour ago. Her face went white. You saw? I saw everything, sweetheart. The question is, what are you going to do about it? For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the party filtered through the glass. Laughter, clinking glasses, the kind of sounds that used to make me happy. Now they just sounded hollow. Eli, please, can't we just what? Pretend it didn't happen? Go back to playing house while you sneak around with your boss? I don't think so. I started walking toward the house, then stopped. Oh, and Sophia, you might want to dig up that prenup you signed when we got married. The one you never bothered to read because you were so eager to get out of that studio apartment in the bad part of town. You should probably read it now. The look of panic that crossed her face told me she remembered exactly what I was talking about. Good. Maybe now she'd understand that this wasn't just about hurt feelings. As I walked back toward the house, I could hear Mason's voice through the glass, probably trying to calm everyone down and minimize the damage. But it was too late for damage control. The mask had slipped, and everyone had seen what was underneath. I paused at the door and looked back at Sophia, still standing by the pool in her expensive dress, looking lost and scared. For just a moment, I remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago. The one who'd been grateful for everything, who'd looked at me like I'd hung the moon. That woman was gone. In her place was a stranger who'd rather kiss a dog than dance with her husband. The next morning, I woke up alone. Sophia's side of the bed was cold, and her pillow still had that perfect hotel corner tuck that meant she hadn't slept there. I lay there for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around me. Funny how quiet a place gets when the lies stop echoing off the walls. I found her in the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's clothes, nursing a cup of coffee and avoiding eye contact. She looked like heck. Makeup smeared, hair a mess, that expensive dress wrinkled beyond repair. Rough night? I asked, pouring myself coffee from the pot she'd made. I slept in the guest room. I noticed. Question is, why? Guilty conscience or just couldn't stand to look at me? She finally met my eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Fear. Eli, about last night. What about it? The part where you publicly humiliated me or the part where you got caught making out with your boss? We weren't making out. Right. You were just standing very close together, whispering sweet nothings about quarterly earnings. I sat down across from her. Sophia, I may be a simple contractor, but I'm not stupid. I've got eyes, I've got a brain, and I've got a very clear memory of what I saw. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like it was a life preserver. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Then explain the new jewelry, the spa treatments, the late nights at the office, the mysterious phone calls you take in the other room. I leaned back in my chair. Or better yet, explain why you've turned into someone I don't recognize. People change, Eli. Yeah, they do. Usually there's a reason. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Dude, are you okay? That was intense last night. Call me. I showed Sophia the message. At least someone gives a damn about how I'm doing. Your friends don't understand our situation. Our situation? Is that what we're calling it now? I stood up, suddenly too restless to sit still. You know what I think our situation is? I think you got a taste of the high life and decided you wanted more than a blue-collar husband could provide. I think Mason Carter showed you what real money looks like, and you decided to trade up. That's not... The heck it's not. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through photos. Look at this. Our wedding day. Remember that woman? The one who cried when I carried her over the threshold? The one who said she'd never been happier? Sophia glanced at the photo, then looked away quickly. That was a long time ago. 8 years. Not exactly ancient history. I put the phone away. What happened to her, Sophia? What happened to the woman who used to pack my lunch and leave little notes in my toolbox? I grew up. No, you sold out. There's a difference. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm going to work. When I get back tonight, I want the truth, all of it. Because if I have to find it out myself, you're not going to like the results. The drive to the job site gave me time to think, which was both good and bad. Good because I needed to process what was happening. Bad because the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I'd met Sophia at a charity auction 8 years ago. She was waitressing at the event, trying to make ends meet while taking night classes in marketing. She was beautiful, sure, but it was more than that. She was hungry, not just for food, though I later learned she'd been skipping meals to pay rent, but hungry for something better. I admired that drive, that determination to improve her situation. I was the guy who bid $5,000 on a weekend getaway I didn't want just to have an excuse to talk to her. I was the guy who showed up at her crappy apartment with groceries and stayed to help her study. I was the guy who saw potential in her, when everyone else saw just another pretty face serving drinks. And now I was the guy standing in the way of her social climbing. My phone rang as I pulled into the construction site. Ryan. How you holding up, brother? I've been better, you? Hungover and confused. What the heck happened last night? I ended the engine and sat in my truck, watching my crew arrive for another day of honest work. My wife decided she's too good for me. Come on, man. It can't be that simple. Can't it? Think about it, Ryan. When's the last time Sophia came to one of our barbecues? When's the last time she hung out with any of our friends? When's the last time she acted like she was happy to be married to me? Silence on the other end. Ryan was a good friend, but he wasn't stupid. He'd seen the changes, too. So what are you going to do? I'm going to find out exactly what's been going on, and then I'm going to decide whether my marriage is worth saving. Need help? Maybe let me make a few calls first. After hanging up, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Dale Morrison, former cop turned private investigator. We'd served together in the Navy, and he owed me a favor from a few years back when I'd helped him renovate his office for free. Eli Quinn, I was wondering when you'd call. You heard about last night? Brother, half the city heard about last night. Your wife's friends have been posting about it on social media since dawn. You're famous. Great. I need a favor, Dale. Surveillance, information. I need to know what my wife's been doing, who she's been seeing, and how long it's been going on. That's going to cost you. How much? For you? Just promise me you won't do anything stupid when you find out the truth. Define stupid. Anything that involves me having to visit you in jail? I looked out at the construction site, at the honest work being done by honest men. I'm not going to jail, Dale, but I can't promise Sophia and her boyfriend are going to enjoy what comes next. Fair enough. Give me 48 hours. The rest of the day passed in a blur of concrete and steel, the kind of physical work that usually cleared my head. But today, every swing of the hammer felt like I was building something while my personal life crumbled around me. When I got home that evening, Sophia was gone. No note, no text, nothing. Just an empty house and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume. I poured myself a beer and sat on the back patio, looking out at the pool where I'd caught her with Mason. The water was still, reflecting the evening sky like a mirror. Peaceful, deceptive. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stay out of things that don't concern you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, everything concerning my wife concerns me. Who is this? No response. I forwarded the message to Dale with a note. Looks like someone's nervous. His response came back immediately. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. I'll have something for you tomorrow. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the doors behind me. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Every room held memories of the woman I'd thought I married, but also evidence of the woman she'd become. In the master bedroom, I found a receipt tucked into her jewelry box. Dinner for two at the most expensive restaurant in the city, dated 3 days ago. The night she'd told me she was working late. The receipt was signed by Mason Carter. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the piece of paper that confirmed what I already knew. My wife was cheating on me. The woman I'd loved, supported, and built a life with had thrown it all away for a man with a bigger bank account. The smart thing would be to file for divorce quietly, split everything down the middle, and move on with my life. but I'd never been accused of being smart when I was angry. And I was very, very angry. Dale's call came at 7 in the morning, waking me from the first decent sleep I'd had in days. We need to meet, now. That bad? Worse than you think. Denny's on 5th Street, 30 minutes. I found him in a corner booth, looking like he'd been up all night. 3 empty coffee cups and a manila folder sat on the table in front of him. Tell me, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Your wife's been seeing Mason Carter for 4 months. Regular Tuesday lunches that turn into afternoon hotel visits, spa treatments he pays for, shopping trips on his credit card. The works. I'd expected it, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. What else? It gets worse. Dale opened the folder and pulled out a series of photographs. These were taken last week. The photos showed Sophia and Mason at various locations around the city, restaurants, hotels, his office. In every single one, they looked like a couple, holding hands, kissing, laughing together like they didn't have a care in the world. How long have you known? I asked. I suspected for weeks, but I needed proof. Your little scene at the party gave me the opening I needed to start digging. What about his wife, Gina? That's the interesting part. She filed for legal separation 2 weeks ago. Apparently, she's known about his affairs for years, but this time she's decided to do something about it. An idea started forming in my head. Is she still in town? Lives in the penthouse downtown. Why? Because I think Mrs. Carter and I need to have a conversation. Dale leaned back in his seat. Eli, what are you planning? Nothing illegal, nothing violent, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let them destroy my life without consequences. What kind of consequences? I gathered up the photos and put them back in the folder. The kind that hurt worse than divorce papers. Gina Carter agreed to meet me that afternoon at a coffee shop near her apartment. I'd expected someone bitter and broken, but the woman who walked in was elegant, composed, and absolutely furious. Mr. Quinn, I've been wondering when you'd call. You know why I'm here? Your wife and my husband. Yes, I'm aware of their arrangement. She ordered a latte and sat down across from me. The question is, what do you intend to do about it? That depends on what you know. She smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. I know Mason has been cheating on me for 15 years. I know he's stolen money from joint accounts to pay for his affairs. I know he's promised at least 3 different women that he was going to leave me for them. And I know your wife is just the latest in a very long line of conquests. Why haven't you divorced him before now? Because I was stupid enough to love him, but love has its limits, and Mason finally found mine. She pulled out her own folder, thicker than Dale's. Financial records, hotel receipts, credit card statements, phone records, everything you need and to destroy them both. What do you want in return? I want to watch Mason's world burn. I want him to lose everything he cares about, his reputation, his business, his money, and I want your wife to understand that she's not the first woman to think she could replace me. I looked through her folder. She wasn't kidding. She had enough evidence to end both their careers and reputations. This is a lot of information. I've been preparing for this day for 2 years. I just needed the right partner. What did you have in mind? Gina's smile turned predatory. There's a charity gala next weekend, the kind of event where everyone who matters will be present. Mason's receiving an award for his contributions to the community. And I think it would be the perfect opportunity to share some home movies with the audience. That evening, I went home to find Sophia in the kitchen, cooking dinner like nothing had happened. She'd changed clothes, fixed her hair, and put on makeup. She looked like the woman I'd married, but I could see through the performance now. How was your day? She asked, not looking up from the stove. Educational. Yours? Busy, lots of meetings. With Mason? Her hand froze on the spatula. Some of them, yes. He's my boss, Eli. Right, just business. I sat down at the kitchen island and watched her cook. Sophia, do you remember our wedding vows? Of course. Refresh my memory. What did we promise each other? She finally turned to face me, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. Eli, please don't do this. Do what? Ask my wife to remember the promises she made to me? For better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and health. Forsaking all others. Ring any bells? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I pulled out one of the photos Dale had given me. Sophia and Mason kissing outside the Ritz-Carlton. This is cruel. The color drained from her face. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The question is, how long did you think you could keep lying to me? She sank into the chair across from me, the fight going out of her like air from a punctured balloon. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been cheating on me with Mason Carter for 4 months. You've been lying to my face, spending his money, and making a fool out of me in front of everyone we know. Tears started streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. The woman crying in front of me was a stranger. I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen. Every Tuesday for 4 months, every lie you told me about working late, every time you came home smelling like his cologne and pretended everything was normal. Eli, please, can't we work this out? Work what out? Your affair, your lies, the fact that you publicly humiliated me in front of 30 people? I stood up and walked to the window. Tell me something, Sophia. When you were with him, did you ever think about me? Did you ever feel guilty? Or were you too busy planning your new life? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Make me understand how the woman I loved turned into someone who could betray everything we built together. She was sobbing now, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I was lonely. You work all the time, and when you're home, you're tired. Mason made me feel special. I work all the time to pay for this house, your clothes, your car, your lifestyle. Everything you have, I provided. And you repay me by sleeping with another man because he makes you feel special? I know how it sounds. It sounds like you're a selfish, ungrateful woman who threw away 8 years of marriage for a few months of excitement. I walked to the door, then turned back. Pack a bag, Sophia. You're not sleeping here tonight. You can't kick me out. This is my house, too. I pulled out the copy of our prenup that my lawyer had faxed over that afternoon. Actually, it's not. You might want to read this, specifically the section about adultery. Her face went white as she recognized the document. I never read that. I know. You were too excited about moving out of that roach-infested apartment to bother with the fine print. But it's all there in black and white. Infidelity voids your claim to any marital assets. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you need. After that, I'm changing the locks. She started to say something, then stopped. Maybe she finally understood that this wasn't a negotiation. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Mason has a nice place, or maybe one of your friends can put you up. You know, the ones who have been encouraging this affair for months. As I watched her walk upstairs to pack, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. For the first time since this nightmare started, I was the one making the decisions. But this was just the beginning. Sophia and Mason had humiliated me, betrayed me, and tried to destroy my life. Now it was my turn, and I was just getting started. The charity gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, the kind of event where people paid $1,000 a plate to feel good about themselves. I'd bought a table for 8, inviting Ryan, Dale, Gina Carter, and 4 other friends who'd been witness to Sophia's humiliation campaign over the past few months. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit and carrying a laptop bag. The AV crew was still setting up, and it took surprisingly little effort to convince them I was part of the evening's presentation. A $100 tip and a story about last-minute changes to Mason's award video got me 5 minutes alone with their equipment. By the time the guests started arriving, everything was ready. I watched Sophia enter with Mason, and I had to admit they looked good together. She was wearing a new dress, something expensive and elegant that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Mason was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, playing the role of successful businessman and philanthropist. They made their way around the room, accepting congratulations and playing the perfect couple. Several people glanced my way, probably wondering why the scorned husband was there, but I just smiled and made small talk. You sure about this? Ryan asked, sliding up beside me at the bar. Never been more sure of anything in my life. It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure everyone else can see it too. The dinner portion of the evening dragged on forever. Speeches about community service, presentations about charity work, the usual self-congratulatory nonsense. But finally, it was time for Mason's award. He walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. The applause was enthusiastic, and I could see Sophia beaming with pride from their table near the front. Thank you all for this incredible honor, Mason began. Community service has always been important to me, and I believe that successful people have an obligation to give back. The irony was almost too perfect. He continued for several minutes, talking about integrity, family values, and the importance of being a role model. The audience hung on every word, impressed by his eloquence and apparent sincerity. Before we watch a video about Mason's contributions to our community, the MC announced, let's give him another round of applause. The lights dimmed, and the large screens around the room flickered to life. But instead of the professional tribute video the audience was expecting, they got something much more interesting. The first image was a hotel receipt, dinner for two at the most expensive restaurant in the city. Then came the photos. Mason and Sophia holding hands, kissing, entering hotel rooms together. Each image was accompanied by timestamps and locations, creating a detailed timeline of their 4-month affair. The room went dead silent. But I wasn't done. The next section showed financial records. Mason using company credit cards to pay for hotels, jewelry, and spa treatments for his mistress. Then came the phone records, showing hundreds of calls and texts between them during business hours. By the time the 10-minute presentation ended, Mason looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Sophia had fled to the bathroom, and the room was buzzing with shocked whispers. I stood up and walked to the podium, taking the microphone from the stunned MC. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Eli Quinn, and the woman in those photos is my wife of 8 years. The man being honored tonight has been sleeping with her for the past 4 months, using company funds to pay for their affair. The murmur of voices grew louder. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a private matter that should be handled privately. But here's the thing. When someone destroys your marriage, humiliates you in public, and steals from their company to fund their affair, it stops being private. I could see security moving toward the stage, but Gina Carter intercepted them. Apparently, her family's donations to the charity carried some weight. Mason Carter talks about integrity and family values, but he's been cheating on his wife for 15 years. He talks about community service, but he's been stealing from the company that employs half the people in this room. And he talks about being a role model while he destroys families and corrupts everything he touches. Mason finally found his voice. This is slander. I'll sue you for everything you have. With what money? By the time your wife's lawyers and the IRS are done with you, you'll be lucky to afford a public defender. I gestured to Gina, who stood up and gave a little wave. Oh, did I mention? Mrs. Carter has been documenting your affairs and financial crimes for 2 years. She's got enough evidence to put you away for embezzlement. The security guards had finally made it to the stage, but I was almost done anyway. I want everyone here to remember this moment. Remember that actions have consequences. Remember that you can't destroy people's lives without paying a price. And remember that sometimes, the blue-collar guy you look down on is the one who ends up having the last laugh. I handed back the microphone and walked off the stage to stunned silence. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. I made my way to the exit, stopping only to collect my friends. As we reached the door, I turned back for one last look. Mason was surrounded by angry investors and board members. Sophia was nowhere to be seen, and Gina Carter was holding court at her table, probably sharing even more damaging stories about her soon-to-be ex-husband. Holy crap, Eli, Ryan said as we reached the parking lot. That was incredible. That was just the opening act. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed him the video I'd been recording. Social media is a wonderful thing. By tomorrow morning, everyone in the city will know exactly what kind of man Mason Carter really is. Dale laughed and shook his head. Remind me never to piss you off. Just don't sleep with my wife and we'll be fine. As we drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. For too long, I'd been the victim in this story. Tonight, I'd taken control of the narrative. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The video went viral overnight. By morning, it had been viewed over 50,000 times and shared across every social media platform. The local news picked it up, and by noon, reporters were calling for interviews. I didn't answer my phone. Instead, I spent the morning at my lawyer's office, filing for divorce and preparing restraining orders. The prenup Sophia had never bothered to read was ironclad. Adultery voided her claim to any marital assets, including the house, my business, and our joint accounts. This is pretty comprehensive, my lawyer said, reviewing the evidence Dale and Gina had provided. She's not going to get anything. Good. What about Mason? That's trickier. The company will probably fire him, and his wife's divorce will be expensive. But criminal charges depend on how much money he actually stole. Gina thinks it's substantial, Then he's looking at serious jail time. I left the lawyer's office feeling better than I had in months. Justice was finally being served. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts, but I'd ignored them all. Now, sitting in my truck in the parking lot, I decided to see what people were saying. Most of the messages were supportive, friends and family expressing shock at Sophia's betrayal and admiration for how I'd handled it. But there were also several angry texts from Sophia herself, and a few threatening messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The most interesting call was from a reporter at the local TV station asking if I'd be willing to do an interview. I was considering it when my phone rang again. "Eli, it's Gina Carter. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected. Mason's been fired, his assets are frozen, and the FBI is investigating the embezzlement charges. I wanted to thank you for last night." "Thank me? You provided half the evidence." "Yes, but you had the courage to use it." "I've been sitting on this information for months, too scared to act. You showed me that sometimes the best defense is a good offense." "What about Sophia?" "That's actually why I'm calling. She showed up at my apartment this morning, begging me to help her. Apparently Mason has cut off all contact and she has nowhere to go." I felt a moment of sympathy, then remembered the 4 months of lies and betrayal. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that actions have consequences, and she's about to learn what those consequences are." That afternoon, I drove to the job site to check on my crew. Word of the previous night's events had spread, and I was greeted with cheers and backslaps from the guys. "Boss, that was amazing," Tommy, my foreman, said. "We saw the video this morning. That bastard had it coming. Just remember, this doesn't change anything here. We've still got houses to build." "Yeah, but now we're working for a legend." I was reviewing blueprints in the trailer when Ryan showed up with lunch and a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. "What's wrong?" "Sophia called me this morning. She's desperate, Eli. She's got no money, no place to stay, and Mason won't take her calls. And she's talking about doing something drastic." I looked up from the blueprints. "Define drastic." "She mentioned taking her own life." The words hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything that had happened, I'd never wanted Sophia to hurt herself. I'd wanted justice, consequences, maybe even a little suffering, but not that. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. She was calling from a hotel, but she wouldn't say which one." I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I tried texting with the same result. Finally, I called Dale. "I need you to find Sophia. She's at a hotel somewhere in the city, and she might be in danger." "What kind of danger?" "The kind that makes the evening news." It took Dale 2 hours to track her down. She was at a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour. When I arrived, I found her sitting on the bed in yesterday's dress, staring at a bottle of sleeping pills. "Sophia." She looked up, and I was shocked by how different she looked. The confident, beautiful woman who'd humiliated me at the party was gone. In her place was someone broken and desperate. "You came. Ryan was worried about you." "Just Ryan?" I sat down in the room's only chair, keeping my distance. "What are you doing, Sophia?" She held up the pill bottle. "Ending it. There's nothing left for me now." "That's not true, isn't it? I've lost my job, my home, my husband, my friends. Mason won't even talk to me. I'm 34 years old with no money, no prospects, and a reputation that's been destroyed on social media." "You made choices, Sophia. This is the result of those choices." "I know." Tears were streaming down her face. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. I know I threw away everything good in my life for a fantasy that was never real. Then why are you holding those pills instead of figuring out how to rebuild your life?" "Because I can't. Don't you see? There's no coming back from this. Everyone knows what I did. Every time someone looks at me, they'll see the woman who destroyed her marriage for money." I looked around the shabby motel room, peeling wallpaper, stained carpet, the smell of cigarettes and desperation. This was where Sophia's choices had led her. "Give me the pills." "Why? So you can watch me suffer longer? Because despite everything you've done, I don't want you to die." She stared at me for a long moment, then handed over the bottle. I pocketed it and sat back down. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you figure out how to live with the consequences of your actions. You get a job, you find an apartment you can afford, and you start over. And us? There is no us. That ended the moment you decided Mason Carter was more important than your marriage vows." She nodded, accepting the finality of it. "I'm sorry, Eli. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." "I believe you. But sorry doesn't undo 4 months of lies and betrayal. I stood up to leave, then stopped at the door. Sophia, for what it's worth, I loved you. The woman you used to be, anyway. I hope you find a way to become her again. As I drove home, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Sophia was safe, sadness for what we'd lost, and something else, closure maybe. The woman I'd married was gone, but at least now I knew for certain that she wasn't coming back. The house felt different when I walked in, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like a wound that had finally been properly disinfected. I poured myself a beer and sat on the back patio, looking out at the pool where this whole nightmare had started. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding my life. I'd throw myself into work, maybe start dating again eventually, definitely be more careful about prenups. But tonight, I was just going to sit here and enjoy the silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Dale. Mason Carter was arrested an hour ago. Embezzlement charges, thought you'd want to know. I smiled and typed back, thanks, justice served. As the sun set behind the mountains, I realized that for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The nightmare was over and I'd survived it. More than that, I'd won. 3 weeks later, I was working late in my home office when the security system chimed. Someone was at the front gate. The camera showed a taxi dropping off a familiar figure. Sophia, carrying a small suitcase and looking like she hadn't slept in days. I watched her approach the front door, then listened as she rang the bell repeatedly. When I didn't answer, she started pounding on the door. Eli, I know you're in there. Please, just let me explain. I opened the intercom. Go away, Sophia. We have nothing to discuss. Please, I just need 5 minutes. You had 8 years. You wasted them. But she didn't leave. Instead, she sat down on the front steps and started crying loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. After 20 minutes of the performance, I realized she wasn't going anywhere. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. What do you want? She looked terrible. Thin, pale, wearing clothes that had seen better days. I want to come home. This isn't your home anymore. It's been 3 weeks, Eli. I've learned my lesson. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm ready to make it right. How? By pretending the last 4 months never happened? By expecting me to forget that you threw away our marriage for a man who won't even return your calls now that he's facing prison time? I was confused. I made mistakes. You made choices. Every Tuesday for 4 months, you chose Mason Carter over your husband. Every lie you told me, every night you came home smelling like his cologne, every time you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was normal, those were choices. She stepped closer and I could smell alcohol on her breath. I love you, Eli. I always have. What happened with Mason was just a mistake. A 4-month mistake? A mistake that included you humiliating me in front of 30 people at our own party? I was angry that night. You embarrassed me. I embarrassed you? Lady, you told a room full of people you'd rather kiss a dog than dance with your husband. But somehow, I'm the one who embarrassed you? She tried a different approach, moving closer and putting her hand on my chest. Baby, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, start over. I stepped back, removing her hand. Sophia, stop. It's over. The divorce papers were filed 3 weeks ago. You signed away your rights to this house. When you signed the prenup, there's nothing left to work out. You can't just throw away 8 years of marriage. I didn't throw it away. You did. Every time you chose him over me. That's when she snapped. The tears stopped and her face twisted with rage. You bastard! You think you're so much better than me? You're nothing. You're a blue-collar nobody who got lucky with one woman, and now you'll never find anyone else. Maybe, but at least I'll never have to wonder if the person sleeping next to me is lying to my face. You destroyed my life. You humiliated me in front of the entire city. You made me a laughingstock. I exposed the truth. There's a difference. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Look at this, everyone. Look at the cruel man who threw his wife out on the street. Look at how heartless he is. Are you seriously trying to play the victim right now, after everything you've done? I made a mistake. One mistake, and you destroyed my entire life. One mistake? Sophia, you had an affair for 4 months. You lied to me hundreds of times. You spent another man's money while living in my house. You humiliated me in public and made me a fool in front of everyone we know. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of betrayal. She kept recording, probably planning to post it on social media as part of some sympathy campaign. But I'd learned to be smarter about these things. I pulled out my own phone and started recording her. For the record, this is Sophia Quinn, my estranged wife, who's currently trespassing on my property after I asked her to leave. She's been drinking and she's trying to manipulate me into taking her back after she cheated on me for 4 months. Stop recording me! Why, you were recording me. I thought we were making a documentary about the consequences of adultery. She lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. That's when I noticed the car pulling up to the curb, a black sedan with tinted windows. 2 men got out, and I recognized one of them immediately, Mason Carter, who was supposed to be in jail awaiting trial. Well, I said, still recording. Look who's here. The embezzler and his mistress, reunited at last. Mason approached with the confidence of a man who thought he still had power. Quinn, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, either of you. Actually, you do. He pulled out a thick envelope. This is a settlement offer. You drop all charges, stop posting videos online, and we'll make it worth your while. I looked at the envelope but didn't take it. How much? $50,000. I started laughing. 50,000? Mason, this house is worth $2 million. My business is worth another $1 million. You think I need your $50,000? It's a generous offer. It's an insult. And it's also irrelevant because I didn't press charges against you. Your wife did, and your company did. I just provided evidence. His confidence wavered slightly. The videos, then. Take them down. Why would I do that? They're getting great views. I'm thinking of starting a whole series. How to Catch a Cheating Wife, or maybe Karma's a Witch, Real Stories of Adultery and Justice. Sophia stepped between us. Eli, please. If you ever love me, you'll take the money and let us start over. Start over? Sophia, the man you're standing next to is facing 10 years in federal prison for embezzlement. His wife took him for everything in the divorce, and he's got legal bills that would bankrupt most people. What exactly are you planning to start over with? We'll figure it out. Right. Just like you figured out how to have an affair without getting caught. That worked out great. Mason's composure finally cracked. You self-righteous piece of crap. You think you're better than us? I know I'm better than you. I've never cheated on my spouse, never stolen from my employer, never destroyed someone's life for my own selfish pleasure. You destroyed Sophia's life? Sophia destroyed her own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. You're a washed-up real estate broker facing federal charges with no money, no job, and no future. You're dealing with a man who owns his own business, has no debt, and just got rid of a cheating wife. I'd say I'm in a much better position than you are. That's when he made his mistake. He grabbed my shirt and tried to push me. I'd been expecting something like this. Desperate people do desperate things. I easily sidestepped his clumsy attack, and he stumbled forward, tripping over the front steps and landing hard on the concrete walkway. My phone captured the entire thing. Oh no, I said, not bothering to hide my amusement. Did the big bad real estate mogul just assault me on my own property? And did I get it all on video? How unfortunate for you. Mason had a visible scrape on his forehead, and his expensive suit was torn. He looked like what he was, a broken man who'd lost everything. I'm calling the police, I announced, dialing emergency. I've got a trespasser on my property who just committed assault. Wait, Sophia said, panic in her voice. Please don't do this. Do what? Call the police when someone attacks me on my own property? That seems like the responsible thing to do. The police arrived within 10 minutes, followed shortly by an ambulance. Mason's injuries weren't serious, but he was arrested for assault and trespassing. Sophia was also cited for trespassing and public intoxication. As they were being loaded into separate police cars, I couldn't help but feel a sense of poetic justice. This was where their affair had led them. Not to happiness or wealth, but to criminal charges and public humiliation. One of the officers took my statement and collected the video evidence. This should be pretty straightforward, he said. Clear case of trespassing and assault. The video makes it open and shut. After everyone left, I stood in my driveway looking at the house I'd built, the life I'd created, and the future that stretched out ahead of me. It wasn't the future I'd planned 8 years ago, but it was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Saw the news, you okay? I typed back, never been better. And for the first time in months, That was absolutely true. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with no lies hanging over my head and no unfaithful wife sleeping beside me. The sun was shining, I had work to do, and somewhere in the city jail, two people were learning that actions have consequences. I made coffee, read the newspaper, which had a small article about Mason's arrest, and planned my day. There were houses to build, a business to run, and a life to live. As I drove to the job site, I passed the motel where I'd found Sophia with the sleeping pills. A new sign out front advertised hourly rates. I didn't slow down. At the construction site, my crew greeted me with the usual mixture of respect and affection. These were good men who did honest work, and they'd stood by me through the worst period of my life. "Boss," Tommy said, approaching with a grin, "heard you had some excitement last night. Nothing I couldn't handle." "Good for you! That bastard had it coming." As I reviewed the day's work schedule, I realized that this was what mattered: honest work, loyal friends, and the satisfaction of building something that would last. Sophia and Mason had chosen lies, betrayal, and shortcuts. This was where those choices led. My phone rang. It was my lawyer. "Eli, I've got news. Mason Carter just pled guilty to the embezzlement charges. He's looking at 5 years minimum. What about the assault charge from last night? That'll probably get folded into his plea deal, but it won't help his case. And Sophia's trespassing charge is going to make her divorce settlement even worse for her." "Good. Any word on when the divorce will be final?" "Another few weeks. The prenup makes it simple. She gets nothing." After hanging up, I looked around the construction site. Men working with their hands, building something real and permanent. This was my world, and I was proud of it. Sophia had wanted more money, more status, more excitement. She'd thrown away everything we had together, chasing those things. Now she had nothing, and I had everything that mattered. My phone buzzed with a notification that someone had commented on the video of last night's confrontation, which had already been viewed over 100,000 times. I didn't bother reading the comments. I'd said everything I needed to say. As the sun set over the mountains, I stood on the roof of the house we were framing, looking out over the city. Somewhere down there, Sophia was probably in a jail cell, wondering how her life had gone so wrong. Mason was probably in another cell, facing the reality of federal prison. And I was here, free and clear, with a future full of possibilities. Justice, it turned out, was sweeter than revenge.